Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here for WeAreChange.org. And the reason we are doing this broadcast today is because it's finally becoming more and more and more common knowledge with this coming out in Newsweek yesterday. And kudos to Newsweek. Obviously they're still an arm of propaganda. But for instance, they've been covering 9/11 truth a lot more, not making fun of it, as we're going to see in this article. And they carried Charlie Skelton this year from his live coverage at Bilderberg. And obviously, this is an extremely important topic still today. Because, folks, we are about to see the 17th anniversary of 9/11 in less than 2 weeks. Nobody's talking about it. It's left the media, okay? It's done. It's out. We're not seeing anything on it, okay? And this is a huge, huge revelation. And all of our foreign and domestic policy is based on 9/11 being carried out by Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. And now they've let a little bit more of the Saudi relationship leak in. But really a lot of this is just a distraction and a limited hangout. And that's not to say that I don't think that the authors of the book that we're about to talk about aren't genuine. I absolutely believe they are 100% genuine. They just don't understand what they are looking at. So let's go to this article. We're going to read it for you as we go. Okay? It's easier to bury uncomfortable facts than to confront them. So this September 11th, the ceremonies marking the 2001 attacks on New York and Washington, D.C. will simply honor the dead. In Manhattan, tourists and mourners will gather where the World Trade Center towers once stood, lowering their heads in memory of the 2,606 who perished there. And those are just who's confirmed, folks. The services won't reflect the view that the attacks might have well been prevented. Now, if you said this type of stuff, I just want to jump in. If you said this type of stuff, I don't know, when I was saying it 14, 15 years ago at Ground Zero, you were demonized in the media. You were not allowed to say this stuff. And this is Newsweek coming around. But for hundreds of families and a growing number of former FBI agents, the grief of another 9/11 ceremony will be laced with a barely muted rage. A barely muted rage. There remains a conspiracy of silence among former U.S. and they say Saudi officials about the attack, but that's just part of it. And we're going to get there, okay? Yes, of course the Saudis are covering stuff up about 9/11. But that's barely scratching the surface. It's horrible. We still don't know what happened, said Ali Soufan, one of the lead FBI counterterrorism agents whom the CIA kept in the dark about the movements of the future Al-Qaeda hijackers. Now, why are we discussing this? Okay. So we've heard, well, they weren't communicating. We just didn't know. The CIA didn't know, Jason, because the FBI didn't know, and the FBI didn't know, Jason, because the CIA didn't know. What? What is this circular, nonsensical logic? It's ridiculous. The CIA knew damn well, who these hijackers were. Okay? Now, they said one or two agents. I want to just go right down here. All right, just check it right out here. In 2002, Tenet swore to Congress that he wasn't aware of the imminent threat because it came in a cable. One cable. We weren't allowed to talk about Able Danger. Anthony Schaefer, by the way, in Fabled Enemies. And we're going to get to Fabled Enemies in a minute because I outed a lot of this stuff way back in the day. All right? So here we are. Again, one cable nonsense that wasn't marked urgent. More nonsense, more lies. No one's ever going to be held accountable for this. Okay? But his story was shredded 5 years later when Senator Ron Wyden and Kit Bond forced loose an executive summary that wasn't loose before of the CIA's own internal investigation of 9/11. Oh, there was an internal investigation by the CIA? Weird. 50 to 60 individuals read that one cable. And yes, of course, Tenet knew. Richard Clark, who got up on television and told you, your government failed you. Your government failed you. He was limited hangout. He tried to tell you the truth, but he was highly compromised. We'll get to that a little bit later. So what do you mean, Jason? What do you mean the CIA knew? Guys, it is public knowledge that Diane Albright, before the attacks of 9/11, she didn't call the police, she didn't call the FBI, she called the CIA. The CIA. So we're going to play that for you right now. Okay? Let's just go right here to an old documentary. It's going to have its 10th anniversary coming up, guys. Put this one out September 11th, 10 years ago. Listen for yourselves.
Even when neighbors called the CIA on hijacker Walid al-Shehri, nothing was done.
Now, you might think that some of the neighbors would be shocked to find out that a suspected terrorist lived right down the street from them, but at least one woman we spoke with was not surprised at all. Diane Albright was so concerned about what was happening inside the home at 502 Orange Street, she called the CIA. Why was she suspicious?
The odd coming and going, the different rental cars, the odd-looking people that came and went.
At that time, she says, the agency was not interested.
Now, I want you to think for yourselves for a second here. Why in the world would the CIA not be interested? Middle Eastern men, questionable ways of getting here. Well, that's why. That is the Saudi connection, by the way, folks. Other than the funding, which we're going to get into, Robert Wright and others blew the whistle right after 9/11. That's where Robert Mueller comes in. That's where Michael Chertoff comes in on the cover-up train. All right? That's the truth that they don't want to tell you. So the Saudi Arabian angle is how they funneled in most of these hijackers. And again, please watch this film. It is free online. I've put the link in the live chat, folks. And thank you for the super chats, guys, and thank you for the members. I saw a couple of you in there. You are supporting independent media. No one's talking about this in the alternative media or the mainstream media. Nobody's touching this stuff. All right? And we're going to go deep tonight. We're going really deep with this one. So, Springman, who is a consulate there, blows the whistle prior to the hijackers coming in, saying basically these guys are being funneled in as assets. So people like Muhammad Atta, they're being funneled in as assets. Now, a bunch of them trained at U.S. military facilities, also covered in this film. But I want to point this out, because as we talk about this article behind me and the outrage that people in the FBI and the CIA and now Saudi Arabia are covering up their roles, the 28 pages finally being redacted that was covered in this film, again, a decade ago. And much beyond. You know who else makes it in this film? Joey B., Joseph Biden. Because some of the funding, that was coming directly from the ISI in Pakistan, their CIA. Basically, their intelligence service that was propped up by Western intelligence after World War II, British intelligence, and then further United States intelligence with the Mujahideen, with bin Laden as our asset in the late 70s, early 80s. That's how that worked. That's the truth. That's the Saudi Arabian involvement. That's the Pakistani involvement. Do you think it's a coincidence that they find bin Laden in Pakistan? And believe me, there's holes in that story too. But he was, again, it's in this film, he was protected by the Pakistani military right after 9/11. Okay? So, all this funding, all this stuff could have been out in the open directly after 9/11, and I'm going to show you that right now, with bankrolling bin Laden. All right? And we're going to get to bin Laden himself, because Dick Cheney had some interesting words about Osama bin Laden. Some really crazy stuff. Now, in this, we also have Rex Toome of the FBI saying that bin Laden has never been charged with 9/11 because they don't have any evidence. Okay? But I just want you to hear what Robert Wright, and this was Judicial Watch then. Tom Fitton was coming up from Judicial Watch. He wasn't the big man. You know, Larry Klayman, who was it? Judge, I believe, was the other one that was very big, John Judge. Fitton was kind of in the background. But, they tried to get to this information public. So please listen. Here we go.
At a time when bin Laden was the most wanted man in the world, why would intelligence agencies stop their own investigations, especially as they were closing in on him? Robert Wright and others within the FBI also had their investigations into terrorism stopped prior to 9/11.
Since August of 1999, I've been working to legally expose the very real and foreseeable Middle Eastern terrorist threats to American citizens at home and abroad. From 1993 to 1999, I was assigned to the Chicago Division's Counterterrorism Task Force. The successful investigation, which was codenamed Vulgar Betrayal, V-U-L-G-A-R, Betrayal, led to the June 1998 seizure of $1.4 million of Middle Eastern terrorist funding. These funds were linked directly to Saudi businessman Yassin Qadi. On October 12, 2001, Yassin Qadi was designated by the United States government as a financial supporter of Osama bin Laden.
Larry Klayman of Judicial Watch initially tried to help get Wright's story to the proper authorities.
He wanted to come forward long before 9/11. We were taking those steps beginning last summer to do that. The FBI had 30 days to allow that to occur. They violated their own regulations. They covered it up. If you didn't hear me, I went specifically. I called the Attorney General's office just days after 9/11. I said, Dave Shippers and I represent a special agent of the FBI Chicago field office who has years of information about how the FBI did not do its job, did not in any way investigate in a meaningful way money laundering in the United States. You're now claiming you want to do this. I'd like to make them available to you, Attorney General Ashcroft. And I was met with a response by Michael Chertoff, head of the criminal division. We're tired of conspiracy theories.
Michael Chertoff will later become the head of Homeland Security, the department set up to fight the war on terror after 9/11.
So we're just going to leave it right there. We're going to come back to Fabled Enemies in a little bit. But there you have it. Okay, all this stuff prior to 9/11. Did you hear what the name was? By the way, that was Fitton on the right-hand side. Larry Klayman was the one that was talking. So Fitton's there. Okay, now he's big, a right-winger. And by the way, I like what he's doing with the Russian scandal because it's a non-scandal. He's doing good work there. But he's forgotten about this, and this is extremely important as well. So yeah, we have the Saudi funding. We've got vulgar betrayal. We have the FBI cover-up. We have the CIA cover-up. We have the cover-up regarding Abel Danger because they found Atta. Now, I want to just show you one more thing. This is never talked about. Now, Muhammad Atta, aside from all the great work that's been done with him in Florida, acting like a mafia boss, huh? Oh, you don't know about that? Doing cocaine, dating strippers. Oh, you don't know about that? Why don't you go look into that? There's some really good stuff there. It absolutely needs to be looked at, okay? So there's all that. And then you have James Woods, again, highly on the right. And why is that important? You see what he posts. I mean, he's pretty pro-war guy. Well, Bush was in office. Cheney was in office. The neocons were in office. He had no reason to say this to try to go after or discredit the current government. He was with the war on terror. He's on Bill O'Reilly when he says this. So what's he about to tell you? Well, he's about to tell you about how several of the hijackers, Atta included, got on a plane and did a dry run hijacking prior to the event. Whoa. And he, the stewardess, and the pilot all filled out a report. But we didn't know it was coming. We're running drills of planes hitting buildings, hitting the Capitol building with Osama bin Laden on the cover, covered in this, Vigilant Guardian. Please watch this film. Please watch. We go over the war games, okay? We explain every little bit of this. So here we go. We're gonna play it. The old dry run. That's what's coming here.
Atta and 3 others would do dry runs of the attacks before 9/11. Actor James Woods and others on the plane even filed separate reports to the FAA. Again, nothing was done.
I was on a flight. Without going into the details of what made me suspicious of these 4 men, although it would have been blatantly obvious to the most casual observer, I took it upon myself to go to the flight attendant and ask to speak to the pilot of the plane. The first officer came out. I reported to him that I felt that the 4 men, and I said, can you look over my shoulder and see who I'm talking about? And he said, yeah. I said, I think they're going to hijack this plane. I mean, everything they're doing, and I explained to him these details, which I've been asked to keep private until whatever jurisdiction, whatever trials may take place. Their behavior was such that I felt they were going to hijack the plane. I found out later that not only did he make a report, but the flight attendant also made a report of my suspicions to the FAA. My friend Scott said to me, remember that flight you took in August? I said, yeah, I've been thinking about it all day. He said, well, maybe you should call the FBI. And I said, I'm sure they're being inundated, but I thought it over and I called the local office. 6:45 the next morning, I get a phone call that actually wakes me up, and he said, we want to talk to you about the flight that you took in August. I said, oh, did the manifest match of any of the flights yesterday and my flight? He said, well, we can't tell you that. I said, well, look, I'll get ready and I'll come down to the federal building. He said, we're outside your house. We'll just wait for you.
Wow, 7:15. So this is
6:45 in the morning. I said, and this is the only funny part of any of this, I said, how did you know where I lived? And there was a pause. He said, we're the FBI. We're the FBI, thank you. So they came in and I said, look, I'm dying to know, were these the guys? And he said, well, we've had 36,000 tips in one day. And there's 2 of us, and we're going to be at your house all this morning, so you can do the math, but we can't tell you, So since then, I have identified for sure 2 of them as 2 of the terrorists. Who actually were not on Flight 11, but one was on Flight 175 and one was on Flight 77. And I've been told unofficially, not by the FBI, but by someone else in actually a higher level of government, believe it or not, just through a coincidence, through a mutual friend, that all 4 of them were terrorists involved. As I explained to the FBI, they said, what was your first instinct? And aside from certain things like 4 guys getting on a transcontinental flight without any hand luggage, they said to me, what did you think these guys were? I said, well, I thought they were either 4 law enforcement officers or 4 terrorists, in that they had that thing that guys who are undercover or on a mission have between each other.
Just more evidence that the hijackers had intelligence ties.
So there you go. There it is. I mean, I don't know what else to say, guys. I mean, again, you look at it, and they had all the evidence in the world. They had all the evidence in the world. International intelligence operation. It was made possible through the war games. Now, everybody's going to yell at me, oh, you didn't bring up Israel. You didn't bring up Israel, Jason. There's a 20-minute section in this film. All right, a 20-minute section going over not only the Israeli ties to 9/11, not just the people that were stopped on the George Washington Bridge, not just the people with the explosive residue there. Okay? We don't just go over that. No. We go after the art students that were trailing the hijackers, that had other connections, that infiltrated every high-level government agency. That's also in there. Okay? Oh, wait, there's more? Yes, there's more. There's the admission that they were indeed Mossad agents in there. Oh, wait. You want more? Yeah, that's right. Ari Fleischer, who, again, is constantly on Fox News up until this day. He was the press secretary at the time, talking about the detainees. Yes, there were multiple detainees that were rounded up after 9/11 with Israeli intelligence connections. You want more? We have Colin Powell talking about the same exact things. So obviously they too have a role in 9/11. Let's say it with me. The Pakistani ISI, Saudi Arabia, Israeli intelligence, and yes, the continuity of government program, aka the shadow government here. That's why you had E-4B drones in the air while the attacks were going on. We cover that. That's right. Oh, there were no planes in the air on 9/11? Well, then why were there E-4B drones, doomsday planes, that just happened to be part of these military drills that are on film at and before the second plane hits the tower on 9/11, and right on the scene as whatever hits the Pentagon hits the Pentagon. And we go over in this, whatever hits the Pentagon should have never hit the Pentagon. Should have never hit the Pentagon. Now, we've talked about CIA ties. Let's talk about FBI ties. This is why I don't buy into the FBI nonsense. And by the way, there is a series out there, Newsweek's covering this one as well. There it is right there. It's called The Looming Tower. Okay? And it's on Hulu. And it's about a guy named John O'Neill. If you don't know the John O'Neill story, John O'Neill is a former FBI agent that was in charge of going after the bin Laden unit, played by Jeff Daniels here. Probably aptly played by Jeff Daniels. I've not watched this, by the way, but I've just seen some of the previews. Richard Clark is in it. It's discussing how no one was taking this seriously. I don't want to spoil the end for you, but John O'Neill dies on 9/11 as the head of World Trade Center security, I believe within his first week of being there. He obviously knew something that people did not want. Now, really interesting about this is one of the producers of this, by the way, a lot comes from the book we were discussing, okay? A lot comes from The Looming Tower from the Lawrence Wright novel. But Alex Gibney right here is one of the producers. And if you don't know who Alex Gibney is, he's done some amazing work in the past. I have nothing but respect for Alex Gibney. He did the documentary Enron, The Smartest Guys in the Room. He did Who Killed the Electric Car. And you may be familiar with Taxi to the Dark Side, which I believe won him an Academy Award. So Gibney on this project makes me think that there's a lot of truth coming through on this, but they're never going to talk about Building 7. We cover Building 7, by the way, in Fabled Enemies. You're not going to hear about the Israeli intelligence connections. You're not going to hear about the Pakistani connections, more than likely. Who knows? I haven't watched it. I should watch it before I say it, but that $100,000 wire, remember, the 9/11 Commission lied to your face and said that this operation basically cost $500,000, and we know that a wire transfer to Atta from the Pakistani ISI, General Mahmoud Ahmed, the head of that organization, just prior to this, by the way, it was facilitated by Omar Saeed Sheikh Saeed, who was probably a double agent. He looked like he was an Israeli and American intelligence official, and the same guy that beheaded Daniel Pearl, who actually was looking into some of the financial ties to 9/11. If you don't remember any of that, please look into it. But again, that $100,000 wire, that's denied by Condoleezza Rice. Denied by Condi. The National Security Advisor at the time? Denied. Ooh. And then proven that she actually was meeting with this same gentleman the week before 9/11 that gave them $100,000, 1/5 of what they said the attack is. Can you believe this? This is reality. These are all things that are proven, all things that are real. After you check out Fabled Enemies, and a lot of people are going to be, Jason, are you retracting what you said in Loose Change? Absolutely not. Loose Change, focuses on a lot of the physical anomalies of 9/11, disproving the official story. It's where, the term truther really comes out, because truther was not a term in 2005 when that was released. I want everybody to be made aware of it. It wasn't until the 9/11 truth movement needed to be attacked and they turned truth and truther into some kind of negative term, which I never understood. It's just like, it's just insanity. So going all the way back to, FBI, looking into this, FBI ties, I want everybody to understand, all right, that first of all, the FBI up to this day has 80,000 secret pages on 9/11. 17 years later, 80,000 documents we don't know about. We'll probably never get access to. Remember, we were promised we were going to get those JFK documents this year? Trump said, this is it. And then he said, not now, but 6 months later, this is it. And what did we get? We didn't get them. We didn't get them. You think we're getting these 80,000 documents? 80,000 documents. And you're telling me Robert Mueller's a hero? Robert Mueller's the man? Give me a break. Robert Mueller is a verifiable demon if they exist here on Earth. And he should be prosecuted for many of his war crimes, including the cover-up of 9/11. He's as deep state as it is. And you're telling me he's not with 80,000 classified documents 17 years later? We got those deep cover agents that we need this? Give me a break. Nonsense. And I wonder how many of those documents refer to Khalid al-Mihdhar living with and renting from an FBI informant. That's right, the FBI had their eyes on these guys too. Everything was compartmentalized. Every time somebody tried to put the pieces together, they were told to stop. They were met with resistance. That's what happened to John O'Neill. That's why he left. And that's why he didn't make it out to September 12th, 2001. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. And if you think that we've even made the case that bin Laden did this, I want you to listen to this. It's an interview from Tony Snow to Dick Cheney. Tony Snow actually in the film because he did some of the reporting on the Israeli connections to 9/11. I believe that was a 5-night piece. They did it Monday through Friday. Overall, I think it's like 45 minutes. I picked like the best 3 or 4 minutes to put in there to try to make my point. Fabled Enemies, guys, please watch it. Wish I had put this in Fabled Enemies because this is wild. First, we're going to talk about Saddam Hussein because, you know, we got to bring it back, right? We got to bring it back to Saddam Hussein because right here, we're kind of justifying the fact that, you know, we invaded Iraq and there's no weapons of mass destruction and we're big liars and we've been caught. But we never made the case, really, that he was involved in 9/11. And then he slips in that him and the administration never made the case that bin Laden was directly responsible for 9/11. But we're finding passports of hijackers on the streets of New York City. Oh my God. All right, let's just play it.
United States. I want to be clear because I've heard you say this, and I've heard the president say it, but I want you to say it for my listeners, which is that the White House has never argued that Saddam was directly involved in September 11th, correct?
That's correct. We had one report early on from another intelligence service that suggested that the lead hijacker, Mohammed Atta, had met with Iraqi intelligence officials in Prague, Czechoslovakia. And that reporting waxed and waned with a degree of confidence in it and so forth. Has been pretty well knocked down now at this stage that meeting ever took place. But so we've never made the case or argued the case that somehow Osama bin Laden was directly involved in 9/11. That
Excuse me?
evidence has never been forthcoming.
Whoa.
So
Wait.
Case or argued the case that somehow Osama bin stage that meeting ever took place. But so we've never made the case or argued the case that somehow Osama bin Laden was directly involved in 9/11. That evidence has never been forthcoming. So we've never made the case or argued the case that somehow Osama bin Laden was directly involved in 9/11. That evidence has never been forthcoming.
What do you say to that? What do you say to that? The cover of every newspaper. Every one. For those who don't remember, the younger generation, you know, the millennials out there that may not understand this, big cable was relatively new. You probably had about 50, 60 stations, maybe 100 if you were lucky at the time of 9/11. That's if you had a nice box. Most of us did not even have flat screen televisions, okay? We had a big tube TV, DVR possibilities were just coming into the mainstream. This happens and every single network turned off, and for a week they had the news on. And for a week the news told us Osama bin Laden was guilty of 9/11. Okay? Don't give me that bullshit that you didn't make the case that bin Laden was responsible for 9/11. You shut off VH1. You shut off Comedy Central. You shut off Nickelodeon. You shut it all off. You took over the airwaves when the internet was in its infancy, when things like YouTube were not around, when Google wasn't even really the big boy in search terms. Okay? You turned it all off, and for a week, on every station, you told us it was bin Laden. And then slyly in 2006, you kind of slide it in there. No problem. Oh, by the way, we've never made the case that bin Laden was even responsible for 9/11. Yet people were cheering in the streets when our government announced that we murdered him. What the? Are you kidding me? And I'm sorry. You know, it's 86 degrees out here in New York. I know I'm glistening. I'm worked up. I'm freaking out here. Because, again, our entire foreign and domestic policy is based on this nonsense. Homeland security. Everybody you want to talk about ICE? All you people that want ICE gone? I want ICE gone too because it's a part of Homeland Security. It doesn't need to exist. We did fine before that. We have a Border Patrol. We have an FBI. We have an ATF. Those are the people that took care of that issue. It's another bureaucracy. It's another level to the military-industrial complex. I don't like it either. I want a reformed FBI where people actually pay for their crimes within the agency instead of being promoted. I want a constitutional republic. Is that too much to ask? I want a judicial, an executive, and a legislative branch that actually have checks and balances on one another and prosecute and investigate one another when valid, when it's not some made-up freaking fairy tale story about Russians, okay? That's what I want. I want to see that day. We need to get out of this national security, track, trace, and database slave state that we basically consented to at this point. It has to end. Guys, I want to thank all you guys. I want to let you know that we will be going live this Sunday with another big broadcast of the week's events. We did a live stream over on the backup channel talking about Facebook and a lot of other things. We're trying to put out more and more content. We need your support, so go over there, subscribe to the Pulse Change channel as well. Hit the join button for $4.99 a month. It really does help support us. I thank the guys that gave us the super chats tonight. I saw a couple of the WeAreChange badges. I got to get on it and make some more emojis for you. The Luke emoji. We're going to make a Jason emoji. All right? So, again, thank you guys so much. I can't tell you how lucky I feel that I'm able to do this, bring this information to you, but it's really upon you to get this information out to others. Again, it's 10 years since we've released Fabled Enemies, and most people don't even know it exists. They have no idea the information out there is public that's got Joe Biden, Bo Dietl, some of the best investigative journalism you're going to see on 9/11, I promise you. Once again, guys, thank you. I love you all.